talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 10:08 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. You're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb of Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And welcome this last beautiful Friday of 2022. May 2023 be better? I don't think that I know of.
Oh, we hope so.
Yeah, the one of the best cartoons or memes that I've seen is people round a corner with a long stick kind of trying to open the door to 2023. Not quite sure what we're going to find.
No.
It's been a rough couple of years, folks.
Yes, it has. Yeah,
You know?
especially this one. We've lost a whole bunch of folks.
We have lost so many people
Yeah.
that were so important. And it's been a rough couple years. It's time we got out of the teens and into this better not last a decade.
Well, you know, it's funny. It's like we're seeing aspects, and you predicted this right at the very beginning of the pandemic. It will sort
Take a
of
while.
come back
Yeah.
in different forms for a long time.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see that
Yeah,
now.
that it really was a full 2-year event. 3 actually. You know, we're just starting to come back into community, really.
Sure.
And we see there's a psychological fear that people still have from the pandemic.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's no
Right.
doubt about that.
People
Yeah.
are afraid to go into movie theaters. People are afraid to go into restaurants. And those are things that are just going to take time. The people who are naturally crowd averse, the pandemic really fed into those emotions and feelings. And it's many more people than we think or realize that are crowd averse.
And, you know, there was a story on Nightly News about the younger students and how they were affected.
Oh,
And
especially those that were just ready to go to school
Yes.
when the pandemic started, and so they
Yes.
really didn't get that socialization and the younger we do that, the easier it is on the kid. That's just, you know, we don't socialize the young ones enough, actually, in the way that we live. If we think back to the older times before electricity, when people lived within walking distance of each other.
Wait a minute. There was a time before electricity?
There was a time before electricity. I know. And as I tell my students, there was a time before cell phones. There was a time before smartphones, folks. Yeah. And it's hard once you get used to the new technology to realize that. And I'm gonna give a plug to the Williamsburg Foundation, to Colonial Williamsburg, because one of the things that they do, even though the buildings, yes, are air conditioned and you can't see it because they very cleverly hide it, but they do let you see what it was like before there really was electricity, when people actually had to operate on daylight in order to do their business.
Sure.
And they do have some lamps there with magnifying glasses so that you get an idea of what it meant to burn the midnight oil. That meant to be up really late, and it was not a natural thing for people to want to be up late, although we had already discovered coffee. Coffee changed the world in making it, and it comes out of the Arabian Peninsula, but it changed the world. People started staying up, thank you, caffeine. And that led to things like midnight mass, study nights. We have something in Judaism called Tikkun Leil, which is to spend the night studying, to repair the world.
Yeah.
And those didn't happen before coffee. They just didn't.
Come on.
You need something to keep you up that long.
Well,
It's our
you mean Coca-Cola wasn't around back then?
Coca-Cola wasn't around yet. Yeah, and I'm not sure when Coke started to be farmed and harvested. That's another good question. Of course, Coke has a dark history. At one time, it was an acceptable substance, and You don't hear much about it in the modern Sherlock Holmes, but in the traditional Sherlock Holmes, of course, it was his bad habit that he would go to whenever he was depressed, and that was when he didn't have a case. That was one of the ongoing themes that Watson used to yell at him for, is, well, why do you always turn to Coke when you don't have a case?
I remember in our early ESPN days, one of our producers was Steve Bogart, Humphrey Bogart's son. And so he was talking about those little tiny cups of coffee.
The little Turkish cups of coffee.
Yeah. And he said his dad used to go through 9 or 10 of those little cups during a filming. I'm going, oh my gosh, he must have been on the ceiling, because those are so strong.
Yeah, one of my not so fond memories out of those little tiny cups of Turkish coffee.
Yes,
was visiting an Arab home when I stayed in Israel, and sitting down. It was the first time I'd seen real Turkish coffee. And they, of course, served the little sweet cakes and the little tiny cup of coffee. And I'm like, oh, that's, I can. And, of course, they didn't put cream and sugar out of it. And in those days, I had a milkshake for a cup of coffee.
Sure. I think we all start that way.
Yeah. I think 3 sugars and 3 creams or something.
Gosh.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I never did that.
It was a milkshake. I'm probably exaggerating slightly, but not as much as I wish. Needless to say, I don't do that for coffee now. But the milkshakes that are in the Starbucks thing, you notice I've got water. That's my new go-to. Yeah. And so I saw that little tiny
the Starbucks for you.
I saw that little tiny cup, and I thought, no problem. I can get that much down without cream and sugar.
No.
Oh, let me tell you, that was when that hit my taste buds. They had all kinds of words for me because they were just not used to that intensity.
Strong stuff.
Yeah,
wow.
It was.
Yeah, when I heard that, and of course I remember those movies well. Just thinking, okay, they didn't do that in one take.
Yeah.
It was like,
probably not.
What kind of shape was he in by the last?
Probably
take
not.
Or whatever. Wow.
And that's probably where you get some. Never mind. So those are things that we've learned over time, and it is a different world than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we've talked about it other times, right? That's where we get phrases. I wonder if some of the social distancing that is popular in some cultures comes out of previous pandemics.
Well, it would make perfect sense.
Being afraid of getting too close to someone who is sick.
Yeah, it's not like pandemics are new.
No, pandemics have been around since people. Actually, before people, probably, but who knows?
Well, and you have to wonder. I know there's theories of asteroids coming in and destroying the dinosaurs. You wonder if it was kind of a virus that might have struck those guys.
There's all kinds of things that they were probably also themselves pushing the envelope of what they could do to exist, because some of them are living on plants. Mm-hmm. And as the climate changes and as the dinosaurs get bigger and bigger, they can't move as well. And so they're just pushing themselves out of existence, if you will.
There was no climate change before Al Gore.
Of course there was. There's been climate change since there's been a planet.
Certainly.
We've had ice ages and heat ups and ice ages and heat ups. And those things are still happening. And the question is whether or not we're accelerating them or aggravating them, or are we fighting them? Those are questions, and I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to. I do know that the climate is changing. Mm-hmm. I just don't know how much we're contributing to it. And I confess I haven't done enough research to answer that. That's not my field of expertise, and so I leave it to those for whom it is. I do know that things are changing. We're not getting the same afternoon rains in Florida that we used to get. Used to be that you could count on a thunderstorm.
You
most
almost
of the
set
summer.
your clock by
You
it.
could set your clock by it.
Yep.
And that's not quite as true as it used to be. So yeah, things are changing, and so yeah. So for the folks, I'm not a denier. I'm not a believer. I'm an agnostic, if you will, as far as that goes. I believe that things are changing. I just don't know how much we're contributing,
Right.
or not. And I don't think we have all the answers yet. That's one of those things that we'll know what really well if we survive another 1,000 years. They'll be able to look back and say, well, that's what happened. And there's a lot of things in life that are that way, that we can tell after the event what the impact was. We're seeing, like in COVID, we're starting to see now what the impact was for children, as you said, that didn't get that socialization. And I started to say that in the old communities, you would have a community of children that would interact when they were young. Families were bigger, there were more kids, there was more child death, unfortunately. Much harder for families to deal with. Yes and no, because it was more expected. It wasn't viewed as so much against the order of nature, because people knew that kids died. We still have an incredible number of children that die, and it's very sad and very tragic. We're better at it. We're better at saving more children now than we used to be, and we can combat some of the childhood diseases, but that has been there for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never been easy for the parents. Never been easy for the rest of the community. But it was more understood, if you will. It wasn't viewed as such an anomaly. We tend to hide in our culture people who die. And COVID has made that so much harder because it was such a fast-acting, deep-reaching. Right? If you don't know somebody who died from COVID, and I'm finding it hard to believe that somebody doesn't know somebody, but if you didn't know somebody yourself, you certainly know somebody who knows somebody. We're at most 2 degrees away.
Sure.
And I think that we're probably 1 degree. I know people who've died from COVID. I knew people who died from COVID.
Yeah.
And I certainly know people who knew people. We've got people in our congregation who have relatives that passed from COVID and its complications. And just as we probably all know people who've died of heart attacks. We all know people who've died in car accidents and other traumas. Cancer, right? There's many things that take people out. And so where are we now in coming up on 2023 in just 2 days? It's hard to believe that.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's amazing.
It's there's been so much happening, and yet it's right here. And I'm hoping it's a better year. I hoped that 5783 would be a better year, and it's been a trying year. Life is not fair. It's not about fairness. There's no... We want things to be fair in life, and life itself is a gift and not fair. It's a gift. And we don't know how long any of us is going to be here. We don't know how long any of us will have those that we love near us. People will come and go from our lives. That is the price, if you will, of surviving, is losing people that you love from this plane of existence. And no, I don't know the answer. I don't pretend to know the answer of what happens next. I know what I believe, but I've got no evidence for that. I've got no evidence. I can acknowledge that that's a belief and a hope. And someday I will find out, and you will find out, and we'll see how and what and where.
Mm-hmm.
And life is a gift.
That's the key, and we have to remember that.
Right.
And I think a lot of us forget it a lot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. I look at those that I've lost, and I try as hard as I can to remember the gift of having had them. And that's the key of focus. It's what when I work with people who are grieving, that's the measure of healing. When you can spend the amount of time you can spend acknowledging the gift of their being in your life, versus the pain of losing, that's the measure of healing. When the wound is sharp and new, you're focused on the loss, which is really all about you. It's not about them. When you focus on the gift, then you're focusing on them.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I get it, right? When you first lose somebody, it is a wound. And you are licking that wound, if you will. Right? The point is to stop the active bleeding of your soul's heart. And that's a challenge. And to which, as I often tell people, the most important thing is just to be there for people. And because people have to do their own healing. Each person does their own in
their own way.
In their own way.
Yeah.
And it's as varied as people are. Some people get angry a lot. Most people deny. Of course, we've got the 5 stages of grief, rather. 5, 7, depending on which system you use. And people go through that the wanting to trade. If you make them well, if you make them walk back in the door, I'll do this. That's bargaining, and it's not going to work. Those bargains don't work, but you have to get to that point of recognizing that. And I don't believe it's real, that's denial. Right? That I have the sense they're going to walk in the door. That's a form of denial. And those are hard things. And it's one thing. Rabbi Marcia Prager did it so well when her dad passed. She walked into the room and she was leading a class on grief and grieving. And she said, and all of this is academic, and then it's why my dad? Why my dad? And of course, that's the question that you ask. Why is this happening to me? And is it a punishment? No, it's not a punishment. It's part of life. It just is. We want things to be good or bad. That in itself is in some ways self-destructive. Don't judge. Enjoy the joys, accept the gifts, and go from there. Mm-hmm. Don't dwell on the negatives. They're going to happen. Or to paraphrase, it's one of the things when I haven't taught religion in a while at IRC, but when I did, I always said, I wish that the Buddha had said that there is always pain. They always translate it as there's always suffering. And I think that suffering is the point that he was about. There's always pain in life. Things hurt us. Things are not the way we want. And that is an element of pain until we learn to accept what is, not just what we want it to be.
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is always pain in life, but you decide whether or not it makes you suffer. If you accept it and say, hey, that's a pain, and I hurt, and now let me deal with it, then the suffering is lower. And another thing that Rabbi Marcia Prager always used to say, when all else fails, lower your expectations. Because it's our expectations that govern a lot of our emotions.
My old boss used to tell me that. When I look at you, I lower my expectations.
I don't think that's quite what she meant. I don't think. So, and I think that there is the other side to that, right? Strive to be part of the solution. Strive to repair more than we damage. And as long as we can tilt our lives in that direction, then I think we've got a right to have some peace and some joy in life, is to move toward what can I do? How can I help? How can I be of assistance? How can I be part of the solution instead of digging my heels in and being part of the problem? And it's not about having no backbone, certainly, because there are big problems that need tough solutions. We do need to do some things that are not easy. So it doesn't mean letting everybody roll over you, but it's how do you handle the situation? How do you look for the solutions in the situation? And if butting your head on something isn't working, look for a workaround. Look for another approach that's going to be a win-win. And take it from there. Because I think that we can do that. I think we can find answers that work. We don't always have to take the first thing that somebody says to us if we're negotiating or something like that. That doesn't mean just roll over and say, okay, the world is the world. We do have to make it better. That's a conscious, active effort to do. La'asot, to do. There's an interesting piece in the prayer, because a lot of times people will say to me, well, it's Shabbat, we can't do this, we can't do that. And that's not the point of Shabbat. Shabbat is about doing Shabbat. La'asot et ha-Shabbat. To do the Sabbath. And so it's a very active time, but it's not physical, it's spiritual.
It used to be, you talk about the Sabbath, that businesses would close, say on Sunday or Saturday. That just doesn't seem to happen anymore.
You don't see there are still some places that are closed on Sunday. Of course, the blue laws are gone.
Yes, and we had a bunch of them in New England, believe
everybody
me.
had them.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, back in the Stone Ages when the dinosaurs roamed, blue laws were the rule of the day in some states. And the reality is that not everybody observes either Saturday or Sunday or Friday as a Sabbath kind of day. Just in Port St. Lucie, we're less than 25% affiliated with any faith tradition. That doesn't.
What?
I'm talking about affiliate. I'm talking about actively practicing.
Yeah.
The majority of those folks, yes, are Christian, but not all of them. And many of them are spiritual, not religious, right? Which means they really don't know what they're doing, and they're not actively participating in a religion. That, I think, is in some ways very sad for them, because it does offer some ways to help deal with some of the kinds of issues we're talking about. There's a psychosocial aspect to all religions, regardless of which faith tradition you take on. It gives you a community to be in. And some people mistake casual friendship for that. And if it's not helping you be a better person, then that's not a good community for you, period.
And of course, the ultimate spiritual community was Esalen up in the Big Sur back in the 60s.
Uh-huh. Okay, gotcha. Folks, a little bit of sarcasm here and there.
Just a little.
Just a little bit. And so, but getting back to it, and New York for a while had a rule that if you were open on Sunday, you had to be closed on Saturday, which is their nod to Jews. But what about Muslims that take Friday to go for Jummah? Friday's their day for going for the big service. And it doesn't matter. We need to take one day a week to recharge our spiritual batteries. And for Jews, that's Friday night from sundown Friday to sundown on Saturday. So it feels like it spans two. In fact, the word for weekend in Israel is 6-7, meaning Shishi Shabbat, the sixth day and the seventh day, because you get ready in the morning and then you start in the afternoon to get ready for it, and then you observe the Sabbath in whatever way you do it. And then Saturday night's usually a party time. I used to love to go out to the restaurants or the movies on a Saturday night the year that I spent in Israel. So they have a different, and they go back to work on Sunday.
Okay.
Because that's their culture. It oddly enough works well for the Muslims, because they just have they stop work in the morning and they go to their service, and then they relax for Friday, and they have Saturday off to do what they choose. So each culture has different ways of recharging the batteries. So I'm not bothered that stores are open. I go shopping on Sundays because I don't usually go shopping on Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
And, working at a couple of different places, I don't have a whole lot of free time in my week.
You think?
So Sunday afternoon is a very popular go shopping time in my household. But I typically stop at the market on the way home from here too. So, yeah. I think that we need to give people some time off. It depends on who and what they are as to what day works for them in their schedule. Some people prefer a weekday off. There's a wonderful experiment actually going on in a number of large companies, which I think is a step in the right direction, which is to require people to put in 32 hours, 4 days, 4 8-hour days, and pay them for 5.
Oh, that's, yeah.
And there are some companies doing that, and what they're discovering...
It's big in California now.
Of course, California always leads the way on things like that. But those people are seeing a boost in productivity that is surprising even those who expected something. And it makes sense, because right now, if you work 5 days a week, then you've got to figure out, how and where you're going to squeeze in the doctor's appointments, the this is, the that's, and you end up taking from the productivity of the week. But if you have a day off during the week when you can schedule all those things, then you don't schedule it during the workday, and instead you give 8 hours for 8 hours.
Because I worked in sports in Los Angeles, I always had midweek off.
Yeah.
And that was wonderful.
Yeah.
I got a lot done.
Yeah. You just didn't get to church on Sunday.
Most of the time I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, early. it was early, but
you really had to work it through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Saturdays are harder because a lot of sports are scheduled on Saturday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
As we all know, the Koufax story of when he would and wouldn't, and and of course we've got in the Senate the Joe Lieberman, right, with his way of observing Sabbath. He would walk and vote, but he wouldn't write.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different workarounds for different people, and I think that all of that working together, if we recognize that people are doing what they can, and as long as they're not hurting anybody by it, let them be. Let them be. Let the system work. Let the different people recharge on different days at different times. And the hard part, of course, is to get the retail businesses to recognize some of those things. I hope we do get to a 4-day work week, candidly. I think that it will lead to better productivity and not 4/10s, which is the other way to do it.
Well, aren't the colleges here are 4-day, aren't they? Is most of the
Kaiser
time,
has some
like
Sunday classes,
Friday off?
Friday classes. No, Kaiser has some Friday classes. IRSC in the summer doesn't.
Oh, okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
And it varies. I think classes are much lighter on Fridays. I know of some classes that are on Fridays. It's certainly on the schedule. The campus is active on a Friday. I see that when I don't typically go to the campus on Friday because my Fridays are crazy between the radio show and then getting ready for services in the evening. So my Fridays are jam-packed and busy. But there are classes in different colleges and universities. Certainly there's public schools on Friday as well. But and that becomes the other issue. If you have a day off, are the kids in school? Do they get a day off or not? And do they get out early? Those are all things that have to be worked out, but they can be.
Well, and just think back, if you have the memory to think back to when we were kids.
To the dinosaurs. Yeah.
To the dinosaurs.
They were cute.
Childcare, which was mom back in the day.
Yeah.
It's not that not that
mom or dad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, you look at the difference in generations.
Well, now it's grandma and grandpa.
Well, yeah.
For a lot of families.
Well, and even ours. I mean, we had the grandkids here in the radio station a lot.
Yeah.
As we were caring for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing that used to happen more was that kids would come with parents. And depending, if it was a ma and pa shop, you could have the kids in the store. But now that's not as easy, and there's safety and health concerns with
Sure.
having the kids in the store. But kids used to be much more part of our everyday life, and they were just around, and people have kind of pushed them away and made it harder, and there are fewer of them. We're not reproducing at a replacement rate in America.
There was a story on our CBS Network News on that. I guess they mentioned the numbers of countries, Russia being one, almost the entire Eastern Bloc is included in that. In Italy surprised me, being under 2 children a family. I mean, I look back at my Italian relatives. I mean, 6 or 7 was normal. No more.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's one of the signs of quote unquote developed countries is that the birth rate goes down, and part of that is the parents work harder to increase the level of living. Right?
Yes.
That kids work against that. Even China discovered that when they moved off of the 1 child to the 2 or 3, they discovered that families didn't want the added expense of those extra kids because it's expensive. In China, particularly because they spend a lot of money for the free education.
For free education, yeah.
Well, there's always an up and a down in every system. Because in China it's free, there's not as many slots available as there are kids who want it. So the competition is fierce. So the parents end up paying to give their kids a 1-up. But since their neighbors are doing it, they now have to give a 2-up and a 3-up and a 4-up.
Well, and that's where you came in when you were teaching.
Right, when I was
young
teaching the
Chinese
English,
kids.
it was to help them with their second language, with their English scores, because they require English as a language for school kids, especially if you're going to go into the higher levels. Part of that's because a lot of the literature, a lot of the research, the library of knowledge, a lot of that's in English. A lot of it's not, and Americans are at a disadvantage because we don't speak multiple languages. And the other sidebar, and I'm going to this is something for everybody who's a parent out there. Teach your child a second or third language, please. It changes the structure of the brain. When we are monolingual, when we only know one language, we tend to be more opinionated. Because there's only one way of saying things, there's only one way of doing things, and we take that attitude and apply it to other things. If children are bilingual or trilingual, they already know that you can't just translate word for word between Spanish and English. You can't translate word from English to French or English to German. You have to say things differently in order to say it properly in that other language. And that changes the structure of the brain to be able to operate in multiple parts of our brain simultaneously. Because a lot of multilingual students actually think in multiple languages, and they recognize that their thoughts are shaped differently by the shape of the language in which they think.
And it's interesting you say that, because there's a young guy that we met over Christmas holidays, and he's going to Rice University in Houston, and he's, the ultimate egghead. He's going to be going into the space program, and he's already, I think he's a freshman, but he's on a fast track at NASA. Mm-hmm. He's already in several NASA programs, and one of his buddies is Italian. From Italy, and so they're speaking Spanish. What did he call
Spanglish?
It was not English, but it's Spanish or something, and it was a combination of Spanish and Italian, and they're close anyway. But It was funny. It was
And that happens, right? You get that bridging between languages. That's what Yiddish is. Yiddish is a bridge between Hebrew and German.
okay.
Ladino is a bridge between Spanish and Hebrew. And I contend that we're creating something right now called Yinglish, which is a combination of English and Hebrew, because English doesn't have all the words that we need.
That's true. As the dreidels prove.
The dreidels, yeah. There's no... A spinning top doesn't quite cut it. It is, but a dreidel is a specific kind. And so it's easier just to say dreidel than to say a four-sided lettered spinning top. It's economy of words. Menorah. Yes, you can say lamp. That's really what menorah means. As I've said other times, we've got overhead the fluorescent menorah, menorot. And, languages are fluid, and they do... I just saw the letter from menorah. That was too funny. Siri has trouble with it. But there are words like that Torah.
Mm-hmm.
Saying the law, that's a bad translation, actually. I always got a kick out of it because there was a little marquee that I used to pass once in a while on a certain church, and it would say, they're not guidelines. And I'm like, yeah, they are. 10 Commandments. They're not commandments. They're guidelines. Who's going to know if you covet your neighbor besides you and God? Right? Because that's a hidden crime. That's a secret crime. What it does is it poisons the well of your relationship.
Sure.
And that's why it's a guideline. Don't do that. It's not healthy. Don't want the same car that your neighbor wants. Don't let each of you be who and what you are. Do what's meaningful for you without hurting somebody else. So yeah, it's a guideline.
I really like your Lamborghini, by the way.
Yeah, I wish I had one. Yeah, I'd sell it and do something. Do many things.
You build a temple with
it. Yeah. She said as she drives the old Toyota. Yeah.
Hey, I get it.
Yeah. As long as it works, it's a wonderful car with no car payments. Easy paid car notwithstanding. Yeah. I know what that little Toyota's worth, and it's not much, but it gets me. But
it'll
around.
run forever.
It gets me. Probably not forever, but I have driven cars to the point where the only place they go after me is the resting place for parts.
There you go. Yeah.
I have done that. When I left Ohio, when we moved to, that's why I got the Toyota, was when we moved to Tucson, because I had driven my van to the folks that one of the car parts places, the junkyard, and left my van there. I miss that van, but it was ready for that.
So how many miles did you have on it?
Probably 150,000.
Oh,
it was a baby.
Child's play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've done that with a number of cars, and Bill and I tend to like to get when we shop, we'll get a recent car, new to recent, and then just drive it for beyond the payment, so we don't always have car payments. And at a time like right now, that's probably helpful. Although I do confess my Toyota is starting to get a little long in the tooth. But that's, we'll see. It'll be a while. It will be a while.
Well, I figure my little used guy has got about 130,000 miles on it, and, it'll probably go for another 130.
I'm probably beyond you.
Yeah, I'm sure of that.
So,
yeah. It's amazing to think of, like, one of your other careers, you have to mention that, was the advent of what you were working on, the tire.
Yeah, there was a time when I worked on tires, yeah.
And you think that, the chemistry involved in that, and
I wasn't a
changing
chemical
the entire
engineer.
industry. Well, but yeah.
But I had to work with the chem engines and the chemists.
Sure.
but I was a mechanical.
There you go.
Okay, one of the now I don't know of one that connects chemical engineers and mechanical engineers, but we used to have this joke about mechanical and civils, that mechanicals are embarrassed when things don't move and civils are embarrassed when they do. So, yeah.
Well, you put the chemical into the practicality of it all.
Yeah, and we actually worked together with the chemical engineers they would be designing what the chemical of the rubber was, and there's many, many different pieces of rubber. And there were some standards that we could pick from. We had certain properties that we knew of certain different things. So the bead rubber is one kind, and what's called the apex, which is the piece that comes off of the bead, and it's where the tire fabric wraps around that little triangular piece. That had a certain kind of rubber. The plies themselves have a kind of rubber. The tread has a different rubber. There's cushions and buffers and many, many pieces that go into a tire.
But you think about, like, when you were there, I mean, your company really revolutionized what we have today.
Absolutely. And I believe they still continue to do that. I believe they're still working very hard at many of those things. So.
And I know auto racing is the ultimate test track, if you will, for all that stuff.
Yes and no. It's a unique kind. I know that they've sold that image.
Oh, okay. Here we go. The real story.
Well, because that's a specific tire guided for speed and handling.
Okay.
But when you're making a passenger tire, for example, noise becomes important. Comfort's
a big deal.
Comfort's a big thing, and safety. All the images of babies in and around the tire advertising is an attempt to speak to the safety issue.
Michelin was great.
Michelin was very good for that.
Michelin was
Put
great
the little baby inside the tube of tires.
Yeah.
Yes, and one of my favorite commercials of a different tire was Pirelli. When I was overseas in the movie houses, they had a stack of tires, and they had some curvaceous cutie coming out of the top, and she, you'd see her up to about here with nothing on, and all she did was say Pirelli. And the proof of the pudding is that I still remember that, and I wasn't really drawn to the sexual image, but it was very, very just like the baby in the stack of tires. It's the same concept. It's creating a visual lock-in memory.
Boy, you talk about a lasting memory. Holy smokes.
Yeah, since the dinosaurs. Because, they needed tires, too, for their little... Never mind.
For the Flintstone
I'm going to get in so much trouble. That's a modern... modern Stone Age family. I used to always laugh about that, right? And I liked how they had the bird that came over and was the stylus for the phonograph. The Flintstones, yes. One way to poke great humor at us, along with the Jetsons.
Yeah.
And you were thinking about that earlier in Swap Shop, Cliff.
Oh, yeah.
You were thinking about the Flintstones with the cogs. Got
it. Yep. Well, and, I look back on the beginning of Fox and that crazy little cartoon that this young kid from Beverly Hills came up with. And, that show has been a staple on Fox.
Yeah.
For 30 some odd years. And it's still on the air.
Well, and then we've got the Roadrunner and the Coyote.
Sure, yeah.
With his Acme.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a great meme running around some years ago from, I think, a sheriff in Texas or Louisiana talking about, beware of coyotes carrying packages from Acme. And if you don't see that, then they're just being coyotes.
That's right.
So, yeah, and coyotes are everywhere now, folks. They were in Cleveland when I lived in Ohio. People are acting like it's new that they're here or there. They've been around It's just that we've impinged so much on their habitat that they have had to adapt to living in neighborhoods and allotments.
I was watching our old station in L.A., and there's this like breaking news. There was a mountain lion sighted up in Big Bear, and I'm thinking, yeah,
Yeah, that's where they are.
That's where they live. So what?
Yeah.
Come
Yeah.
on.
They used to do that every once in a while in Tucson and Sabino Canyon. It's like, that's where they live.
Sure.
The biggest reason we don't see them is we tend not to go up in the mountains at night because there are mountain lions up there.
And that's when they're
That's when they're
wandering
active. They're
around.
nocturnal, and so they
Yeah.
don't come out. They sleep most of the day because they're cats, and you just all you need is a cardboard box, and you can probably find them. She said, knowing that her cats definitely claim any box that's in the house for any length of time.
Really?
Or a drawer. Yeah, they really do. They love. I don't know what that is. They love boxes. They love boxes. They
Was it
love
a security
drawers.
thing, maybe?
They just like to explore and see what's going on in things.
Huh.
And we've got one of those little twirly, the pull-out things in the kitchen, that kind of a drawer for the corner, and he loves to go in there. He'll go under the sink anytime you open that. If he can hear a door opening from anywhere in the house and be there. And, it's just, I think, a cat thing. They want to explore what they don't know. A friend of mine in Louisiana had a picture about, don't leave your drawer open even 3 inches, and it shows a picture, and all you see are the 2 cat eyes looking out from the picture. Because they do. They like to get into tight places and find things. Of course, that's where they're going to find mice and other things like that. So it's an instinctive desire. But there are always pictures of even lions with cardboard boxes.
Really?
Yeah,
That's cool.
You see them every once in a while because they will do it. They'll throw a box in and the cat will climb in it. Something about that security around it. We used to have a dog that did that. The standard joke for us was that she could fit in a shoebox. She couldn't, but she tried.
Yeah, sure. Oh,
And
yeah.
she could squeeze herself into things that you would not have expected.
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, animals are wonderful. I think they make our lives fuller. They remind us to enjoy life. They might carry fear, and sometimes fear is hard to unwire, but they don't carry grudges anywhere near like people do.
We used to have a lab, and she was so funny because, and just like you say, she could be anywhere in the house. You open the refrigerator door,
She'd be right there.
and she's right next to you.
Yeah.
It was like, okay.
Just in case you drop something.
That's right. Oh, is there any carrots around?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
I call the dogs the eternal optimists.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
They're always there, and you can see on their face they're hopeful that it's going to work the way they want it to. And, please.
Yeah, that's so true, though. That really is.
And they're going to make sure they're there to just in case something drops, just in case there's a treat to be had. They learn quickly how and where treats are likely to occur. Now, here's an interesting thing for folks who now spend far too much time on screens. Check and see what your dog or cat is doing while you're on the screen. They're hoping you look at them for just a few minutes, just as your kids are.
Cliff runs into this all the time in Swap Shop, where some callers call, and their dogs start barking.
Yeah.
And it's really funny. It's like, okay, yeah, they want attention.
They want attention. You're talking to this little bit of plastic in your hand, and
Yeah.
a little bit of plastic and metal, and they hear a voice, so they want some attention.
Hey, what about me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
I think that's a common thing, and I know that when I first get home, my dogs are like, "Are you going to look at us, or are you going to look at your phone? Going to look at us, or look at your phone?" And if I look at the phone, they go and they lay down on the bed. But if I look at them, then they'll stay close.
Interesting.
And once I realized that, then I realized how important it was to give them some "Hi, I'm home" time instead of just checking the phone. Yeah. Kids too,
Oh, that
folks.
stupid phone has changed
we
our lives.
it really is. It's become if you look at a restaurant, right? You look at people are not sitting and looking at each other. They're looking at their phones.
Yep.
And it's dramatically changing our culture. I don't know the I know that we need to give kids in particular some 3D experience, like simple things like blocks, so that they get some eye-hand coordination. We're going to see it in sports. My prediction is we'll see it in sports in 5 or 10 years. The kids coming up will not tend to have the same dexterity, the same eye-hand coordination, and we're going to wonder how people like Babe Ruth ever made it. Because we're not giving our kids that skill. The stuff on the screen is great, but limit the time, folks. If there's anything that I can suggest to parents, limit the amount of time on the screen. Take some 3D toys with you to play in the car, to play wherever you're going. If you've got kids, they need simple things. Don't spend a lot. Get a simple set of blocks. Or
Legos.
Or American logs if you can still find them.
Oh, yeah. They're out there.
Those kinds of things. Things where they actually have tinker toys. Things where they actually have to put stuff together. Play pickup sticks. Some of the things that require, there's the I forget what it's called now, the one with the stack of wood that you pull out who can pull out which pieces from it. You know what I'm talking about. That wooden column that's got all the oblong pieces in it. Yeah, who can pull out which before it tumbles. Any of those kinds of things that require a child to build that structure in their brain. We don't come with that prepackaged, folks. We learn that from experience. So give our kids healthy physical experiences, not just screens. That's my ending comment, if you will, for 2022. May 2023 be a wonderful secular year for everyone, a great new year for our society. Please, God, we could use a good year here. Happy New Year, everyone. Stay safe, and to those celebrating Kwanzaa, may it also fill you with joy and a recognition of your heritage.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world. Happy New Year.